A dark room, one candle. The flame shivers and paints gold on the margins of a leather notebook. Carl Jung sits in the hush pen poised, listening to the kind of silence that does not come from the world but from what the world refuses to hear. He has watched a pattern gather itself in men who chose a difficult vow, 90 days without the usual escape. No bargaining, no performances, no secret outlets. At first, a hollow time lengthens the body, protests, the mind searches for noise. Then almost imperceptibly the current changes. Eyes clear. Breath steadies. Their presence thickens in the air. They stop radiating need and begin to hold gravity. Ideas arrive not as sparks but as tides rolling in from a depth they had never reached before. Jung notes it without triumph. Not denial, not prudery, a redirection. Energy once scattered across glances, gestures, rituals of pursuit, returns to the center and congeals into a single force. The man does not chase, he emanates. The room seems to adjust around him. People feel it before they can name it. Most will not enter this quiet. They fear the mirror that appears when the noise is gone. They fear the beast, the ache, the truth of what commands them. But those who remain long enough to hear the silence speak cross a threshold the ordinary map does not show. The candle gutters. Ink settles. Jung closes his eyes as if measuring the weight of a secret. This is not a technique, he writes. It is a change of nature. It does not merely alter what a man does, it alters what he is. And if you learn to hold this fire without letting it devour you, nothing about your life will continue as it was. The door will not close again. The candle fades, but the words remain. Jung's pen has traced a pattern that feels less like discovery and more like remembrance, as though he has uncovered something humanity once knew, something carved into the bones of civilization. Because this was never only Jung's secret. The ancients whispered it long before psychology had a name. Their rituals, their codes, their victories each bore the imprint of this hidden discipline. Think of the Spartans, warriors forged in fire. Before battle, they practiced abstinence not as denial but as preparation. They believed desire scattered the mind, that lust left the shield unguarded. To stand on the battlefield with steady hands and unbroken focus, a man had to gather all his power inward. It was not strength of muscle alone, but the containment of the flame within. Their enemies faced more than spears. They faced men whose very energy had been condensed into an unstoppable force. Across the sea, the samurai walked a similar path. In their dojos, the blade was not merely sharpened on stone, it was sharpened on restraint. Discipline was their oxygen, and abstinence was woven into training not as morality, but as clarity. To master the sword, they first mastered the self. A warrior who squandered his essence was not only weaker in combat, he was unfocused, uncentered, unable to meet death with serenity. In monasteries from Tibet to Europe, silence carried the same message. Monks withdrew not because they hated the body, but because they sought to redirect it. Every tradition, every faith that pursued enlightenment demanded a sacrifice to silence the lower hunger so that higher vision could emerge. In the dark cells of stone cloisters, in the chanting halls of mountain temples, they learned that the force called desire could be transfigured into prayer, into vision, into illumination. And in the modern age, when the battlefield was no longer grass and blood, but the frontier of invention, the same principle resurfaced. Nikola Tesla, eccentric and brilliant, refused the path of indulgence. He claimed that abstinence gave him sharper insight, that his inventions, currents that reshaped the world, were born from energy, redirected rather than dissipated. Isaac Newton, too, lived with a peculiar detachment. While others chased pleasure, he chased the secrets of gravity and light. His solitude was not empty. It was charged alive with the electricity of thought. Jung recognized the pattern and named what the ancients already knew. The most powerful energy within us is also the most dangerous. Left ungoverned, it fragments the soul, but harnessed it becomes a current that can conquer kingdoms, write scriptures, split atoms, and build empires of stone or mind. This is not a new revelation. It is the forgotten key. Civilizations, orders, and geniuses all carried it, practiced it, proved it. And yet, in our age of constant stimulation, it has been buried, mocked, erased. We are told that desire must always be fed, that hunger must always be answered, that abstinence is repression rather than refinement. But the record of history sings another song. The Spartans turned it into victory. The samurai forged it into honor. The monks raised it into prayer. The scientists condensed it into genius. Jung was not alone. He was the latest custodian of an ancient lineage of knowledge that terrifies the modern world because it suggests that the human being is not weak, not enslaved to craving, but capable of wielding desire like a blade, like fire, like light itself. And if all these voices across centuries and continents repeat the same truth, then the question is not whether it works. The question is, why have we allowed ourselves to forget? The voices of history fade, but their echo remains. If the Spartans, the samurai, the monks, and the great inventors all held the same key, then the question Jung asked was inevitable. What separates those who rise into focus, into creation, into mastery, from those who remain trapped in fog? He saw two kinds of men, not divided by wealth, nor by education, nor even by raw talent. The line of separation cut deeper. It was a division of energy between those who dissipated it and those who contained it. On one side stood the man who cannot bear silence. His days are filled with noise, scrolling, swiping, chasing, releasing. He feels alive only when validation flickers in front of him like a drug administered in tiny doses. He is never still, never whole. His eyes wander, his mind darts, his body fidgets. He laughs too loud, speaks too fast, and when alone he feels a hollow gnawing that he cannot name. To him, desire is not an energy, it is a master. He obeys it instinctively, compulsively, and each time he does, he fragments further. He believes he is free, but he is chained to the next moment of release. His life drifts like smoke. On the other side stands a different presence, a man who has learned painfully to withhold, to hold back, not from fear, but from strength. He is not desperate for eyes upon him. He does not beg for validation. When he enters a room, he does not shout, he simply arrives and the air shifts. His gaze does not dart, it anchors. His voice does not plead, it resonates. He is not chasing stimulation. He emanates gravity. The same energy that once threatened to consume him now condenses into focus. He reads and remembers. He works and finishes. He decides and does not waver. Jung saw it again and again, two paths, two destinies. One is a fog, where a man never truly meets himself because he is always running from silence. The other is a forge where silence itself burns him clean until what remains is sharp, dangerous, undeniable. And here lies the truth. Most fear. The difference is not visible at first glance. Both men may look the same, two bodies, two faces, two lives. But one walks hollow, held together by habit and distraction. The other walks heavy, carrying an invisible fire that shapes every step. Society rewards the first man with constant stimulation, telling him this is normal, this is life. Advertisement screens, endless distractions, all whisper feed the hunger. Feed it now, feed it again. And so he does until decades vanish, and he wonders why his strength has thinned, why his soul feels borrowed. But the second man, the one who resists, who refuses to let desire dictate his rhythm, he does not live for validation. He becomes validation. His restraint distills into presence. His absence of need transforms into magnetism. Others feel it before they understand it. They cannot name it, but they sense it. This is a man who does not chase. Jung framed it not as morality, but as energy. One path leaks, the other contains. One path scatters, the other condenses. One path drowns in noise, the other learns to hear the silence. And so the question turns toward you not as philosophy, not as metaphor, but as choice. Because the division is not abstract, it is not carved into fate. It is written every day by the decision of what you do with the most primal force you carry. Do you surrender it to fleeting pleasure, feeding the endless cycle of emptiness? Or do you forge it into focus, into creation, into a sovereignty no one can take from you? Two men, two destinies, two paths. And Jung's whisper cuts through the centuries, the choice is yours. The line between two destinies was clear to Jung, but he did not leave it as poetry or speculation. He mapped it step by step, stage by stage, like a cartographer sketching a forbidden land. He saw that the transformation of energy, the journey from compulsion to sovereignty, followed a pattern as ancient as ritual. He called it not a theory, but a map. And every man who walked the path of abstinence passed through these same thresholds, whether he wanted to or not. Stage 1, silence. The first threshold is not peace. It is the collapse of noise. When a man stops chasing, the hum that once guided his movements vanishes. Days stretch unnaturally long. The rhythm that dopamine once dictated dissolves. There is no reward, no target, no outlet. Time itself becomes heavy. This is the silence after years of static, the unbearable awareness that without pursuit, nothing fills the air. Most men run back to the noise at this point, but those who remain begin to sense what lies beneath the constant hum, emptiness, raw and unfiltered. Stage 2, collapse of persona. If he does not run, the next fracture arrives. The mask. For years, perhaps decades, he has lived as a persona designed to attract, to seduce, to be chosen. His clothes, his gestures, his humor, even the way he enters a room, all calibrated for desire. Without the cycle of pursuit, the mask begins to crack. He looks in the mirror and sees not a hero, not a lover, but a stranger. The persona disintegrates, and with it the fragile scaffolding of his ego. This stage terrifies because it feels like death, but it is not death. It is the first exposure of the self without costume. Stage 3, the shadow. When the mask falls, the darkness behind it stirs. Jung called it the shadow. The repressed drives the denied impulses, the beast buried alive. Abstinence drags it into the light. Anger, cravings, sudden waves of lust, shame, and fear surge without mercy. It feels like withdrawal, like madness. The man believes he is regressing, becoming less human. But Jung knew better. The shadow does not appear to destroy it, appears to be integrated. This is the crucible. Here the man must face what he has always fled. Not suppress, not deny, but name, accept, absorb. Only then can the beast become power rather than poison. Stage 4, integration. If he survives the storm, something extraordinary begins. Energy, once chaotic, starts to organize. The scattered hunger condenses into focus. The rage transforms into clarity. The lust transmutes into drive. Here the man learns that abstinence is not deprivation, it is redirection. He begins to finish what he starts. He rises earlier, works longer, speaks less, but with weight. People notice without knowing why. His energy has stopped leaking. It builds, it holds, it radiates. He is no longer enslaved by desire, but neither does he deny it. He has woven it into the fabric of his being. Stage 5, the inner throne. And finally, the rarest stage. Few arrive here, for it demands endurance beyond craving, beyond ego, beyond fear. It is the throne, not a seat of power over others, but sovereignty over the self. Here the man no longer negotiates with temptation. He does not beg for focus. He simply acts because his energy obeys him. The throne is silence but not emptiness. It is fullness, weight, gravity. When he speaks, others fall quiet. When he moves, the room rearranges around him. He does not seek control. He is control. Jung's map is not metaphor. It is the hidden geography of the psyche under pressure. Silence, persona, shadow, integration, throne, 5 gates, 5 trials. Most men never pass the first. Some glimpse the second and flee. Fewer still wrestle the shadow. A handful taste integration, and only the rarest sit upon the inner throne. The map exists. The path is known. But Jung warned, knowing the map does not mean you will walk it. The terrain devours the careless. The silence exposes the weak. The shadow consumes the unprepared. And yet for those who endure, the throne awaits. Every map is useless until a man sets foot upon the road. Jung's stages look neat in ink, but in life they arrive like storms, tearing at body, mind, and soul. To walk this path is not to read of it, it is to bleed in it. The first silence. It begins quietly, almost innocently. A man resolves to stop chasing. At first he feels strong, proud. A few days pass and the body still remembers the old rhythm. But then the clock changes. Hours feel swollen heavy. Nights stretch like tunnels. The buzzing that once filled every idle moment vanishes, and in its place is a vacuum. Physically, the body resists. Restlessness creeps into the muscles. Sleep fractures into shallow fragments. Food tastes dull, conversations feel empty. Psychologically, the man is disoriented. He expects clarity, but instead he meets a strange vertigo time without reward, motion without music. Spiritually, he realizes he has been carried by noise for years, and without it, he does not know how to walk. This is not peace. This is exposure. Most men flee here, mistaking the silence for death. The cracking of the mask. If he stays, the silence begins to eat at the self-image he has worn for decades. The smile designed to attract feels false. The confidence crafted for approval feels brittle. The man looks in the mirror and no longer believes his own performance. Physically, he may feel sudden fatigue, as if the weight of years of pretending finally settles on his shoulders. Psychologically, he is shaken. Jokes fall flat. Charm evaporates. Even his reflection feels hollow. Spiritually, he confronts the terrifying truth that what he thought was himself was often only bait for others. Without validation, the mask cracks. What lies beneath is raw, awkward, unpolished. Here the ego trembles, sensing its own fragility. Many men panic, scrambling back to old rituals just to keep the mask alive. The withdrawal storm. Should he refuse to run, the storm breaks. This is no metaphor. The nervous system rebels like an addict denied his drug. Anger erupts without warning. He snaps at strangers, seethes at friends, rages at shadows. His cravings twist not just toward sex, but toward every ritual of pursuit, scrolling, flirting, fantasy. Physically, he sweats, shakes his chest tight with unspent charge. Sleep becomes war. Dreams turn vivid, torrid, invasive. Psychologically, he is tormented by obsession, by the constant voice that whispers, one release and it ends. Spiritually, he faces despair, the sense that life itself has lost flavor, that nothing holds meaning without the ritual of pursuit. This stage breaks most men. They drown in anger, relapse into indulgence, and convince themselves the storm was proof that abstinence is unnatural. But Jung saw it differently. The storm is proof that compulsion was the master. The shadow unveiled. Beyond the storm lies a darker revelation. The shadow steps forward. Not a metaphorical ghost, but a visceral encounter with the hidden drives buried under years of denial. Lust mutates not into romance, but into raw hunger. Shame resurfaces, old wounds bleed, forgotten humiliations replay. Rage mixes with grief, and fear coils around both. Physically, the man may feel as if an animal thrashes inside him, claws against the cage. His skin prickles, heart races, body aches for release, not to find pleasure, but to escape the confrontation. Psychologically, nightmares intensify, fantasies grow darker. Intrusive thoughts multiply. Spiritually, he feels haunted, as if demons long banished have returned to demand recognition. But here lies the turning point. The shadow does not appear to destroy. It appears to be claimed. If he flees, it will hound him forever. If he faces it, names it, integrates it. The beast becomes ally. The hunger becomes drive. The shame becomes humility. The rage becomes fuel. This confrontation is the crucible. Few endure it without breaking, but those who do emerge scarred and sovereign. The thin light of integration. After the storm and the shadow, a quiet dawn begins. Not bliss, but order. Energy no longer leaks chaotically. Focus sharpens. Projects abandoned for years find completion. Conversations deepen. The man speaks less, listens more, and yet when he speaks, others fall silent. Physically, strength returns. Workouts cut deeper. Discipline feels natural. Psychologically, the fog clears. The cravings still whisper, but they no longer command. Spiritually, he senses a current within him, not scattered but condensed, waiting for direction. Integration is not victory. It is the beginning of mastery. The nature of the ordeal. This path is not gentle. It is not polished. It does not flatter the ego. It rips away comfort, exposes wounds, resurrects demons, and tests patience. Jung called it necessary because only through ordeal does the man stop being a servant to compulsion. The silence isolates him. The mask humiliates him. The storm breaks him. The shadow terrifies him. But the integration rebuilds him. This is the ordeal, a trial by fire where abstinence ceases to be an experiment and becomes initiation. And beyond it, a throne waits. The ordeal carves a man down to his bones. It strips him of noise, shatters his mask, shakes his body with storms, and drags him face to face with his shadow. If he survives, if he refuses to run, refuses to break, something begins to stir that no distraction, no indulgence, no quick release has ever given him. This is the moment of transformation. At first, it arrives quietly. He notices that his anger no longer erupts without aim, it condenses into focus. The craving that once gnawed at him like chains becomes a raw pulse of energy surging into his work, his training, his vision. The silence that felt unbearable begins to hum, not with emptiness but with a kind of presence. Physically, the change is undeniable. His posture straightens, his voice deepens, his eyes sharpen. Sleep returns, not restless, but heavy, restorative. Muscles harden, endurance grows. His body feels as though it has been rewired to carry something larger. Psychologically, his mind clears. Decisions come faster, sharper, with less hesitation. He finishes what he starts. He no longer begs for clarity. Clarity emanates from him. Spiritually, he senses a center forming, a gravity he did not know he possessed. This is sovereignty, the shift from being ruled by impulses to ruling over them. The fire of libido no longer leaks into compulsions. It gathers, swirls, refines. He no longer seeks control. He becomes control. The throne within. Jung described this stage not as perfection, but as sovereignty. A man sits upon an inner throne, not a throne of conquest over others, but of dominion over himself. Here, temptation still exists, but it no longer commands. Desire still stirs, but it does not dictate. Hunger still whispers, but it does not enslave. He acts without bargaining. He chooses without hesitation. His discipline is no longer effort, but nature. What once felt like chained self-control now feels like wings. He is not crushed by abstinence, he is crowned by it. This throne is invisible yet undeniable. When he walks into a room, others sense the weight. He does not seek attention, but attention bends toward him. He does not project charm, he radiates presence. Women feel it before he speaks. Men notice it without understanding. It is not arrogance, not performance, but gravity. The fire transmuted. What once consumed him now fuels him. Libido, in its rawest sense, was never just sexual. It was the primal force of expansion, creation, penetration of reality. Unmastered, it scattered in fleeting moments of pleasure. Mastered, it becomes the current behind genius legacy empire. This is why Jung insisted sublimation is not repression. It is refinement. The same fire that once burned him now illuminates his path. His anger becomes determination. His lust becomes vision. His hunger becomes endurance. He no longer leaks energy into empty rituals. He invests it into what endures: books, structures, disciplines, families, nations. Every act of restraint sharpens him further. Every temptation resisted strengthens his throne. The sovereignty is cumulative. Each day of mastery adds weight to his presence, density to his energy. He ceases to live as a boy chasing validation. He becomes a man who commands reality. The crown of sovereignty. This transformation terrifies everything that once owned him. Screens lose their hold. Flirtations lose their sparkle. Addictions wither in his grip. He is no longer distracted by every flicker of stimulation. He is anchored, rooted, grounded. And this crown is not placed upon his head by others. It is forged in the fire of his own endurance. He does not need applause because he has ceased to perform. He does not need validation because he has ceased to beg. He does not need conquest because he has ceased to be ruled. On the throne, he is not perfect, but he is whole. His shadow has not been killed, but integrated. His hunger has not been erased, but mastered. His silence is no longer void, but cosmos. The rare arrival. Few men ever see this stage. Most collapse in silence. Most shatter when the mask cracks. Most drown in withdrawal or flee from the shadow. But those who endure find themselves sitting in a place they never imagined existed, an inner kingdom vast and still, where the self is not fragmented but unified. From here, every choice flows from sovereignty, not compulsion. He does not ask, "What do I crave?" He asks, "What do I build?" He does not wonder who will validate me. He knows I validate myself. He does not cling to fleeting highs. He pursues permanence. And so the throne becomes not only a symbol, but a destiny. The man who once chased shadows becomes the man who casts them. The throne within is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a different kind of life. Transformation is glorious, yes, but without integration it risks remaining a private vision, a secret fire locked in the chest. Jung was clear: sovereignty must flow into the fabric of daily living, otherwise it calcifies into pride or dissolves into fantasy. Integration is the art of taking the invisible kingdom and building it into the visible world. The discipline of work. The first practice is in labor. Energy once lost to distraction now pulses with restless power. Left idle, it will corrode, but directed, it builds. Men who reach this stage discover that tasks once tedious, writing, training, crafting, studying, become alive with urgency. The same fire that once burned for conquest of flesh now burns for completion of work. To integrate is to set clear goals and give the fire somewhere to flow: a book, a business, a body, a vision. Procrastination fades not because the man has become a machine, but because his energy no longer leaks into compulsions. He works not in frantic bursts, but in steady waves. Each finished act reinforces sovereignty, carving his identity deeper into reality. The discipline of body. Integration also transforms the body. Restraint rewires the nervous system, sharpening reflexes, deepening strength. Training ceases to be punishment and becomes ritual. A run, a lift, a martial practice all become altars where energy condenses into flesh. This is not vanity, it is embodiment. The sovereign does not sculpt his body for others' eyes. He sculpts it to carry his own fire without collapse. Every repetition, every drop of sweat is a declaration: I am not at the mercy of my impulses. I command them. The discipline of relationships. Here the change is most visible. In the past, desire dictated his connections. He sought validation in flirtation, distraction in indulgence, ego in conquest. Now he approaches differently. He no longer needs approval. He chooses. Women feel it first. They sense the absence of need, and that absence becomes presence. He does not pursue frantically. He radiates magnetism through containment. His intimacy, when chosen, is no longer consumption, but creation. He enters relationship not as a beggar for affection, but as a sovereign offering presence. This shift alters everything: the quality of connection, the depth of love, the durability of bonds. Friendships, too, are reshaped. He no longer lingers with those who feed noise. He seeks companions who build, who create, who sharpen. Integration demands alignment, and so his circle changes not through arrogance, but through resonance. The discipline of mind. With abstinence, clarity grows. But clarity alone can drift into obsession. Integration means training the mind with structured journaling, meditation, study. Jung himself insisted that the energy released by abstinence must be given form, or it would turn destructive. So the sovereign learns to guide thought like he guides body. He cultivates focus through daily practice, weaving silence into meditation, pouring vision into writing, expanding depth through study. The fire becomes language, insight, architecture of thought, the discipline of spirit. Finally, integration is spiritual. In the silence once feared, he now hears a voice deeper than impulse, the quiet current of purpose. He learns that libido is not simply desire, but life force, the same current that builds stars, grows trees, births civilizations. To integrate spiritually is to align with this current, to ask not merely what do I want, but what am I for? His abstinence ceases to be private discipline. It becomes offering sacrifice devotion. Whether to God, to legacy, to family, to creation, the direction matters less than the fact that it transcends the self. From ritual to rhythm. At first, integration feels like practice, deliberate, difficult. But over time, it becomes rhythm. The man no longer thinks of abstinence as cage or test. It becomes second nature, woven into his breathing, his speech, his choices. His days align around creation, not consumption. His nights carry rest, not regret. This is what Jung meant by individuation. The self no longer fractured, no longer fleeing, but whole, ordered, sovereign. Integration is the bridge between the mystical and the mundane. Without it, the throne is fantasy. With it, the throne becomes empire, not of land, but of character, clarity, and legacy. And so the question lingers. What will you build now that you have found the fire? The map is drawn, the ordeal endured, the throne revealed, the practices woven into daily rhythm. And yet Jung left us with something that no map can resolve: a mystery. Because sovereignty is not the end, it is a door. When a man no longer lives at the mercy of desire, he discovers a silence deeper than noise, deeper than hunger, deeper even than discipline. It is the silence of the soul. For years it was drowned in static and craving and performance. But when those vanish, when the body is still and the fire is mastered, something else begins to speak. Jung wrote that the soul was never silent, we were. Our ears were deafened by compulsion. Abstinence practiced consciously strips away the interference and reveals a voice we could not hear before. It is not loud, it does not shout, it whispers from within. Who are you when nothing commands you? What are you when no craving drives you? What remains when every mask is burned away? History's warriors, monks, and geniuses all touched this mystery. Spartans faced it in the stillness before battle. Samurai met it in the hush before the strike. Monks prayed through it in the echo of stone cloisters. Tesla and Newton glimpsed it in the solitude of their obsessions. And Jung named it for what it was: the moment when man is no longer possessed by desire but possesses himself. But even Jung refused to close the book with certainty. He warned that the mystery does not end with mastery. Beyond sovereignty lies something greater, something uncharted. Perhaps it is God, perhaps it is destiny, perhaps it is the terrifying freedom of being wholly responsible for your own fire. The throne is not an answer, it is a beginning. A man who sits upon it is no longer distracted, but neither is he safe, for he has no excuses left, no cravings to blame, no masks to hide behind, only himself, naked, sovereign, awake. This is why abstinence is feared, not because it denies pleasure, but because it reveals truth, and truth is heavier than hunger. Jung left us with words that cut deeper than any map. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. The question then is not whether abstinence works. History has answered that. The question is not whether you can endure the silence, thousands before you already have. The question is this: are you ready to awaken? The candle flickers, the chamber falls to shadow, the throne waits in the darkness unclaimed. And the voice inside you whispers not if but when.